All right, let's get started. Hello. So first off, audio check. Can you hear me? Make sure you type it in the little chat box. Going once, going twice. I'm going to assume. All right, there we go. Thank you, Dice Man. I appreciate it. As well as Ross. Thanks. All right, so thank you, everybody, and good evening. Welcome to the very first Everyday Marksman live officially. This is the first of what I hope to be many streams along the way, and we have a couple agenda items tonight to go over. So let's talk about this evening's topics. You may not know me. I recognize a couple of names in the chat already who probably do know me. But for those of you who don't, my name is Matt Robertson. So we're going to talk about who am I. We're going to talk about the Everyday Marksman and what this whole thing is. We're going to talk about this very live stream and what this series is supposed to be about. And then we're going to jump to a Q&A session, kind of an Ask Me Anything. I figured it would be a good way to kick off the very first live stream ever. So with that, let's get down to the first topic here, which is about me. And I expect this whole thing to take probably about, 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the questions as we go. So who am I, Matt Robertson? Well, I like to tell everybody in the podcast that if you've listened to that before, that I'm a former military officer turned tech sector corporate grunt, a shooting enthusiast, avid outdoorsman, and as always, your friend. But I want to talk a little bit more about that background. When I say former military officer, and what does that mean? What did I do? Because if you have never been in the military, that is a very broad term to say. So I don't want to lie to anybody about who am I and what have I done in the past. I want to talk a little bit about what got me into shooting and kind of my philosophy, and that breaks into what we're going to talk about with the Everyday Marksman. So to start off, I spent 10 years as an officer in the United States Air Force. Shooting and tactics and all this fun stuff was frankly not my forte. I was a nuclear weapons officer, meaning that I was the guy in the underground bunkers with the keys to launch ICBMs. So with that came a lot of discipline and a lot of tools and a lot of things, that were really interesting, a lot of good leadership experiences. And then I spent a good chunk, at least half of my military career, in some kind of instructional capacity. Ultimately ending up as what we would say is a certified master instructor. And then when I left the military, I went right into the private sector. I actually had overlap. I took a little bit of my last vacation time in the military while starting my new job. And I got hired in as a professional instructor at a software company up in Northern Virginia. And I've been there for several years and been working my way up into doing more and more of owning how we teach things and how we certify on things. All that to say that my background is in primarily instruction and military. But the shooting side of this came in well before I ever joined the military. And as the story goes, I went out to the range with my best friend at the time and his dad, who was a former Green Beret from Vietnam. And he handed us a bunch of 22 caliber rifles and pistols and such. And that was all great fun. And then he handed us a Springfield 1903 and 30-06. And I remember thinking, okay, well, that rifle didn't kick very much. This one won't be so bad. Little did I know that it was going to bounce off my shoulder and crack me in the jaw. And I've been hooked ever since. So around 2010, even before that, before I went to the military, I started collecting guns, including, and the stuff that you would expect to see, M1A, 1911s, all the stuff that everybody said was great, that you should totally buy at the tail end of the last assault weapons ban. And then I went to the military and just kind of shot for fun until about 2010 or so, where I really started getting into, I decided it was more serious. So I started getting into more competition. At the time, I was stationed in Montana, and there was a really great local range, the Great Falls Shooting Sports Complex. And it was an incredible facility. It had everything you could possibly want as far as long-range precision, short-range tactical, pistol, archery, dog training, you name it, they had a way to support it. And I got involved in a little outlaw competition group where it was the kind of people who you would gather around and watch the Magpul, Art of the Tactical, whatever, DVDs, and then go practice it. And then every Sunday, blowing hundreds of rounds of ammo on shooting various action shooting stages. And then by the tail end of that, I got into precision shooting using the 1,000-yard range. And my very first precision rifle is the one over here behind me. It's a Hawa 1500, and it's kind of followed me ever since. And then I kept getting more and more serious up until probably 2014. And as the story goes, with that one, I was to visit a friend of mine who's also a huge shooting nerd like me. And we had this whole back and forth competition on his property in Mississippi, resulting in the very last stage, if you will, being a 300-yard shot, or 200 yards, 300 yards, I don't remember, but iron sights with an M16A2 suppressed off his second floor window at a little 4-inch popper. It sounds like a really far shot now that I think about it. It probably wasn't that far. Anyway, one shot each. He hit it. I didn't. I'm kind of blame the fact that it was his rifle set up for his sights, but the reality was, as serious as I thought I was just out of practice for doing that. And that begat go to Appleseed and started down a whole new journey about learning about shooting. So that's kind of my background there, and huge shooting nerd from there. Bushcraft, camping, all kinds of great stuff. I spent a month in the backwoods of Saskatchewan, canoeing 6 hours a day, find an island, pitch a tent, catch our dinner, do it again the next day for weeks on end. And I've kind of been all over, do a lot of things, but I'd like to say that I am a perpetual lifetime learner. Now, at some point along the way, I can't exactly tell you when, but around 2014, I started up a little blog called the Everyday Marksman. And it was done on the... So, yes, Ross, it was this big. I'm not going to lie, that trip was actually hard. It was in June, Saskatchewan, maybe July, and like the lakes had been netted out. So it was hard to catch anything. I'm not going to say the fish were like probably about that, but they were enough. Anyway, I get sidetracked. So that gets me to the Everyday Marksman itself. What is the Everyday Marksman? What are we about, or what am I about? So 2014, after I came back from that little informal shooting match, I started a blog about my own marksmanship journey, where I was going to start documenting, here's what I was practicing, here's what I'm learning, here's tips and tricks that I found along the way. I was also getting seriously invested in AR-15s at the time, and I was the go-to guy amongst all my friends. So if they wanted to know what barrel should I buy, I was the guy who would write them a 5-page dissertation, in a Word doc and email it to them, and they would just be overwhelmed. But I kept building on those things I had learned, researching everything from how the twist rates worked, metallurgy to ballistics and all these things. And I kept building on that knowledge across the board. And that formed the basis of the original blog of the Everyday Marksman. And eventually it became less about documenting my own learning and experience and competition experience, and becoming more about helping people like you who had questions. How was I supposed to make the right choice? What kind of optic did I need to buy? And I really enjoyed that. But I found it a little limiting. And why did I find that limiting? Because I love shooting. I love guns. It's just fun. But I got more and more serious about this idea of the citizen soldier, if you will. There's always been an interest of mine in history. And going back to the origins of the National Rifle Association, at the end of the Civil War, identifying there was marksmanship problems amongst the general population. And they founded the NRA originally to help teach those skills to civilians so that should a war ever break out again, then a segment of the population absolutely had the requisite skills to at least survive. They weren't starting from zero. And that mission resonates with me. And that's continued over time. That was the purpose of the CMP following World War I or World War II. In the 50s, there was this whole concept of universal military training following World War II, leading into the Cold War, where the U.S. government thought it would be a fantastic idea to teach military skills to everyone, because should we get involved in a conflict with the Soviet Union, then we needed a population who knew the basics of shooting, of surviving in the field. And, everything flows from there. Boy Scouts, you name it. But the idea was teaching military skills to everyday people so that when an emergency ever came up, they were ready. So when 2018 came around and I started revising what the Everyday Marksman was about, it grew beyond just shooting and guns and all that fun stuff, and started getting much more into the whole mindset piece. What's your physical fitness supposed to be like? How do you get involved in your mindset? What experience should you go have? What kind of survival skills do you have? And to me, this is a total picture, a total citizen, if you will, of a capable individual, someone who is more confident to handle what life throws at them. And this kind of came to a head to me a couple of years ago when I was in my office, and there's a friend of mine, a coworker, who is born and raised in Northern Virginia, total, like, just kind of a sheltered life, I'm not going to lie. And we got to talking about the collapse of society, which I'm prone to do from time to time, as my coworkers like to joke with me. And as we were talking about this, and I was talking through like what you would be thinking about the mentality, he just kind of looked at me and said, "Yeah, I'm probably just going to curl up in my apartment and die." And it stuck with me because I that's the wrong idea. And so much, I feel like so much of the problems we have as a society, as the United States or even around the world, the reason people clamor to have the government take care of them or to rely on others is because they simply aren't confident enough in their own knowledge and their own skills. So I set out to try and change that. And that's the origin of the Everyday Marksman. It's this idea about teaching military and tactical skills to everyday people who want to learn them so that they themselves can become more capable, better citizens, and just live better lives. Shooting to me is essential to that. The marksmanship side of it is essential because I'm sure you know this if you spent a lot of time doing marksmanship, but it teaches a lot of things like discipline and patience and control over your own mind and your body and your breathing. And the better you get at that, the better that you get at other things in life. If you're into serious weightlifting, that's another great example. Talking about someone who goes out and lifts something heavy to challenge themselves in the gym means that they are going to grow character, because they are pushing their way through a difficult situation and coming out on the other end, literally and figuratively, stronger. And as Mark Repetto likes to say, stronger people are harder to kill and more useful in general. And I fully ascribe to that belief. So taking a look at the chat here we go. We got Echo 7 Foxtrot USMC 4Runner is finally at the dealership, picking up tomorrow. That is great news. What'd you get? TRD Pro? Venture model? ORP? Oh, he's answering that one. We'll keep going. So, big fan of 4Runners, by the way. Overlanding is like a whole nother segment of something I'm very interested in doing, but I can only pick one expensive hobby at the moment. So we're going to stick to shooting and fitness. So that's kind of the background of the Everyday Marksman. Now, the next thing I want to get into here is talking a bit about this stream, because while live streaming is new to me and the Everyday Marksman, it is not my first rodeo into producing content. So going back to 2014, I've been running a blog, and my emphasis has always been on the written word. As I'm sure if you've ever read my articles, you know I can be pretty verbose. I like detail. I like history. And the writing piece of it has always been, my core central thing. It's brought me a lot of great things, including getting published in magazines like, American Rifleman. And that's great. And a couple of years ago, I did start up with a podcast. And I love that experience. I like getting to talk to these experts and record the conversation, and then, edit it down to what's the most important bits and produce it as this like audio experience. And I want to keep building on that. But at some point, after I did a couple interviews with other people who are running podcasts and live streams, I got to this idea of there's value in this more informal experience, where it's not just this highly curated, I edit down I take a 40-minute interview and turn it into 15 to 20 minutes of just really good, this is the information, and give it to you. And a lot of stuff just doesn't make it into those podcast episodes because I'm trying to respect your time. I'm trying to say, like, this was the point we're trying to get to, so here's the information, and we're going to go on from there. But I do know that a lot of people really like this more informal experience where you get to watch a couple people just, shoot the shit with each other. I should say, shoot the with each other, if that worked. I'm not sure. I don't have headphones in. But I think there's a lot of value in that, because sometimes it's those side conversations that really have little nuggets of wisdom that kind of expose themselves and makes a really fun conversation. But on top of that, I also really like the interactivity. So I like being able to, while we're talking, while we're having this interview, there's a chat running. We can throw up highlight things people are asking, answer those questions, get that interactivity. And I just wanted that. I wanted to bring that. So to me, the live stream is all about this more informal experience where we're still going to bring in experts. We're still going to interview them. Allison, my wife, wants to come on and talk. We'll do lots more Ask Me Anythings, and we'll do them live like we haven't done in the past. But I think there's going to be some really interesting conversations we're going to have here with multiple people. I've got one coming up, spoiler alert, next week with Ilya, the Dark Lord of Optics, and Jeff Gerwich, who he's been on the podcast a couple times, and we're going to talk about BDC reticles versus precision reticles, because this has been an ongoing debate amongst our channels. And we're just going to live stream it. We're going to let you guys participate. We're going to just record the whole thing. And then ultimately what I'll do afterwards is maybe I'll take that audio and I still do my edit process and that become a podcast episode. But for those of you who got to see it live and you got to participate and see the questions and do all that great stuff. But not everything that happens here on the live stream is going to end up in a podcast. Some of it's just going to stay here. And not everything that's here is going to end up on the website either. To me, all these ecosystems are related to each other, but the video platform is kind of unique to itself. I feel like it's a little more intimate because it's active. We're all here together. We're asking questions. We're participating. And I really like that. And that's unique to this venue. You can't capture that in a podcast kind of audio recording, and nor can you capture it in a written article. Now, there's a couple of rules about doing this. And I think you should know what they are. So just so what you can expect, set some expectations out there. YouTube in particular has a bunch of rules about firearms content. We're all familiar with, a lot of these big platforms don't like guns. And got it. It's unfortunate. So for instance, on the wall behind me, I have a few items on display. I cannot touch them. So anytime the policies say that in YouTube during a live stream, if anybody is handling a firearm, and it's not even clear if that includes if you show a picture of somebody handling a firearm, they're going to pull it. They're going to turn you off and they're going to lay a strike against your account. So I can't do that. But that's not to say we can't talk about a bunch of other stuff. Like, we can bring in optics, we can bring in gear, such as, big old knife that's back there, talking about some bushcraft, or maybe explore things like what goes into a butt pack or a chest rig or any of that kind of stuff, especially when we're getting into fitness topics. So there's a couple rules around that. Second rule is I really want to keep this chat open and going. And eventually, as we get to the Q&A portion of this, we're going to throw the chat up on the screen so everybody can interact. But if you're disrespectful, if you're trolling, then you're out. I'm not going to tolerate that. Right. So that is just the way it's going to be. And see, Western Rifleman, thank you. Articles have helped me become a better marksman through the years. So I appreciate that. And thank you. Good luck. Maybe we'll get to compete someday. If you're in the West, it'll be a little bit harder than now that I'm on the East Coast. But rule number 3. So this one eventually is going to come up. Now, today is Wednesday, November 3rd, and frankly, it's been a pretty good day in Virginia. I'm not going to lie. But in general, I'm not going to touch politics. All right. Outside of like Second Amendment specific things, such as like, if you want to talk about what the Supreme Court was going today, cool. But I'm generally going to stay out of politics. So why is that? Part of this goes back to my history as a military officer, which we're pretty much ingrained that you are neutral. You work for the administration, regardless of who is in power. And that's just the mentality that has stuck with me professionally over the years. The other part of this is, one of the things I've really wanted to do with the Everyday Marksman, both the articles and with the podcast and everything else, has been this open, inviting environment for everybody to come learn something. And politics, just like polite conversation of religion, politics, and all that stuff, it turns a lot of people off. And we all know that the Second Amendment community can be a little purity testing, where it's going to be, if you disagree on this one item, then you're out. We're not going to listen to you. So while I'm absolutely sure I very much agree with almost everybody who would take that stance, I just leave it out of what I create, because there's other places to go do that. And I want to focus on improving yourself and improving your capabilities as a marksman, as a prepared civilian. I also have a pretty strong belief that if we want people to become better, eventually they get involved in things, and what they were scared of that maybe led them to certain positions that they held in the past gets to education, which makes them more comfortable with whatever the item was. I have known several people who I have personally converted who, before I introduced them to shooting and marksmanship, very much were happy to go along with gun control laws, and because it just didn't affect them and just seemed like something that only crazy people liked. And then I took them to the range. Then I took them to the range more than once. Then they bought their own, and now they want to go shoot. And that education process, because it was a friendly, open, inviting environment, made that possible. So that is my stance on politics. I want to make sure we're keeping things open as we go. So Ross talking about you shouldn't have a butt pack, and Western Rifleman, haven't seen people use butt packs, but I've seen them as surplus items. I think this would be an interesting topic. This actually came up in our Discord server recently, and there was some good conversation in there, especially from the former grunts who actually used butt packs. I know they've kind of fallen out of favor a little bit, but I think they're making a return. Okay, so that gets us about 21 minutes into this, and this chat is going. So I'm going to bring the chat up on the screen, and that's going to get to the Q&A portion. So here we go. What do y'all want to know? This is an Ask Me Anything, as long as you stay within those boundaries of I can't touch any firearms in the wall. Be respectful, and we're going to stay out of politics beyond Second Amendment stuff. Who's up? Give it a second here. Fanny pack is greater than the putt pack. All right, so I'm gonna have you qualify that one because I have opinions about fanny packs. Are longer length AR-15 barrels the new vogue? I think this is interesting. So I have a whole article on the website about how barrel length affects ballistics of an AR. I don't think AR-15, like long barrels, going back to the 20-inch and beyond, are necessarily going to be the new vogue because it's in vogue and they're fantastic. Don't get me wrong, I love them. I love the way they shoot. They're super smooth. I know Flannel Daddy himself just put up this whole video about how wonderful vintage rifles are and how smooth it shoots. I think we're hit a point where everybody went so shorter and lighter for so long that now they're bored and they want something different. So now it's just kind of like, well, I didn't do anything long before, so let's go have a long barrel. And they're seeing the benefits of that, and cool. They definitely have their purposes though, especially when you go out to distance. I think that shorter, lighter mantra got real popular for a long time, and it has a purpose, but perhaps it's a little, you go down to that 10.5 inch where you have to suppress it, then you have to start. It comes with a whole set of trade-offs that you probably didn't need or want along the way. Good question though. I am still a fan of longer barrels. I see the Dark Lord of Optics is in the chat. Any thoughts on the utility of a fixed front sight on an AR? Oh, Ilya, I'm glad you're here. Okay, so the fixed front sight topic. I'll be upfront that Ilya and I disagree on this one quite a bit, and that I have a pretty strong belief that the average person, I'm going to arm myself this one here, the average person does just fine with it. It's a good learning tool. It's a good, strong front sight, fixed front sight that's going to be durable. It serves as a great gas block, and it can do a lot of things really well. But we all know that in the modern world, it can get in the way. And if you like low profile gas blocks with long upper rails, it's not going to work out for you. I don't like cutout rails necessarily. If you're going to run optics behind it, especially magnified optics, it can cause distortions that you maybe don't want. There's a reason why I have my Elcan back there on my AR that actually doesn't have any iron sights at the moment. So, it just works better that way. But in general, Ilya, and happy to debate this one publicly, I do think that front sight posts are a great place to start if you don't have anything particular in mind, because you can always cut it down later. Better to have it and not need it than, need it and not have it, I guess. All right, what else we got here? Fanny packs that can attach to chest rigs and plate carriers sound useful until you start running and they hit you in the junk. Yes. I always wondered about the dangler bags. Like, I feel like, not my background, but I feel like in a world that only makes sense in a world where you're riding around in a vehicle and you're not having to sprint everywhere. If it's hitting you in the junk, you're wearing your plate carrier too low. Also a fair point. All right, so what else we got? There we go. With all the hype surrounding high optic mounts, why not go back to carry handle mount? All right, I'm going to refer back to that Flannel Daddy Garantham video. I think he said almost the exact same thing. I honestly don't have a great argument against this. I think it depends on what you want to do. If you're going to mount a red dot on top of it, sure. I don't see a reason why that wouldn't work out. And you can probably, if that ever starts becoming a thing again, I think there can probably be better mounts that arrive. I think my perception right now is mounting one of these like little like Picatinny rails that go up on top of the carry handle, then raise it like another ½ inch off of that. And then you mount, an 8-point Pro on top of that. That gets really high. Some people really like that. But mounting magnified optics, probably a little bit more of a challenge. I know we've talked about that in the Discord server a little bit, about like throwing like a low power prism on top of a carry handle could be really useful potentially. But I really would like to experiment with it, or have you experiment with it first and report back. How about that? How do we get more people in the gun community to be friendly to individual night vision use? It seems like there's a stigma. This is an interesting question because I'm not, maybe it's just circles that I tend to run in. What's the stigma? What is the stigma? Is it because you're being too tactical? Because if that's the issue, then, that's all I got to say about that. But like, I think maybe there's a little bit of elitism that goes on with some of the night vision stuff. I'll be honest. I'll have, I'll highlight this one in a second. But I think when it comes to night vision use, I don't own night vision. I'm not going to lie on that, mostly because I spent a lot of time on other things and dropping $4,000 to $6,000 on night vision that I have a theoretical use for in the apocalypse, or just walking around my neighborhood. The cost benefit to me isn't there. But if you have night vision, more power to you. I would love to have an awesome pair of white phosphor binos and then go do a night shoot. That sounds like an awesome time. I just honestly don't have that much experience with it. But I think the people who poo-poo against us are either doing it because they feel like you're making them feel bad because they can't afford it, or frankly, they don't have the mindset of like, this is not just for hunting or going to the range with your buddies and having fun. Like, this is actually prepared civilian world. And I think that's just something we have to get people closer and closer to. We can explore that one more in the future. Let's see, we got not a fan of the chin weld. Yes, I agree with that one. So this optic actually was my first scope, TR24, and this is my second mount for it. But my first mount was a 1.93 inch height, which is now like what we're going back to with things. And it was the chin weld. So I would mount it up and it would be up here like this, and it worked great for standing and running. But as soon as I started shooting prone or anything more positional, I didn't like it. And now I've gone back down to more of a standard height. It just works for me. I think everybody is also kind of individual and what works for them and what doesn't. So Ilya back in with experimenting with prisms on top of carry handles. I think this is, I'll have to pick your brain about this one because in fact, how about this, Ilya, if you have a moment, I'm going to go ahead and drop a link to you, and you can come talk about that real quick. So let's do that. Find you on Discord. Oh, we're gonna do an impromptu interview here. This is how we roll. All right. So while Ilya is getting that link, see, Jeff Gerwich is the greatest shooter in the world. Hi, Jeff. Welcome. I was just talking about our discussion next week. I know I owe you some talking points on this one. But Jeff is an awesome dude. Everyone who's here, if you have not met Jeff or seen his videos, great YouTube channel. Jeff, feel free to post a URL in the chat to your channel. He's also getting introduced to training. He's a 19-year veteran, special operations in the Army. Great shooter, great guy to interview. Looking forward to talking next week. And also a lot of knowledge. I'm gonna keep picking his brain. Or because you're excluding the poor. I mean, this is back to the night vision comment. So yes, I think there's some people who just really like to, there's an elitism too. If I have night vision, then the rest of you are poors. I know that's the ARFCOM way of thinking about things. So night vision is expensive. Yes. I could probably sell a few rifles and get some nods, but I love my rifles and don't want to sell them. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I see, I'm on the other end of this of like one of the biggest lessons I learned. So several years ago, I have an article about this. It's pretty well known. I went to Max Velocity Tactical Heat 1, which is a 4-day course. First 2 days is kind of more tactical marksmanship, manipulations, all that stuff. And the second 2 days is small. Well, actually, the whole thing is about small unit tactics, small team tactics, about little squads of 4. And I remember this is one of the big takeaways from that is that if you ever get involved in a firefight, then it's better to have friends who can back you up than it is to be the one man who's just got all the gear for yourself. Because bring your friends to the gunfight. That's how you survive and that's how you win. So a while ago, I had gotten this idea of why do I have the ARs that I've got? Why do I set them up the way that I do? Yes, they're all kind of set up for my own individual roles. Like this one is kind of my general purpose, recce-ish one, but I have, red dot equipped. I got another one that's a little bit longer range one. Then I've got my other, throw in my M1A and other rifles. But my idea here was if I had to, these are all very well-equipped, reliable platforms. And if I had to equip my neighbors to defend the neighborhood, I could. And I feel like to me, that was a more important decision. And that also includes not just the rifles, but also support equipment, chest rigs, LBEs, magazines. I could do it. I could equip a small fire team with a loadout, a basic loadout. To me, that being able to do that was more important than buying more capability for myself. Also include radios in that one. Something I have not talked about much. Amateur radio topic we can take into the future. I think that's also a really important topic. That's my personal decision to do with the funds that I have available. But now I'm also getting back into more pistol competition stuff. It seems chin weld works for up close target shooting and less distance work there. So yes, yeah, it works great for up close shooting. I think that's really where it shines. Also under nods, passive nod use where you have to hit your head up anyway. I don't necessarily think it has a problem with distance shooting. That's just the way it is. Excuse me. But I think getting into more marksmanship oriented positions is more challenging. It gets less comfortable with it. So I agree with that. Just saying I'm being too kind. He's not the best shooter in the world. Just being silly. Okay, we're all having fun. But I will say Jeff's got a bunch of videos going on about AKs, and I keep getting this close to wanting an AK. But I've been holding off so far just because prices went nuts. And Jeff, don't forget, you can drop a link to your channel so I can show that up to everybody. All right, the Psionics Aurora Night Vision camera is actually pretty good. It's better. I'm still impressed with 4 nervous. So thanks, JD. I actually have no experience with the Psionics stuff. I keep hearing about it, but no personal experience. What I would be personally really interested in trying out is not so much night vision, but getting the handheld infrared, like the FLIR units, but getting some of the more consumer market oriented ones. And I see Ilya just signed in to the stream here, so we'll bring him on in a second. You give me a thumbs up when you're ready, Ilya. So I think infrared is where I would really like to go next over night vision. All right, and there is Jeff's YouTube channel. If you all want to go check it out, make sure you subscribe. And he's got a class coming up this weekend, I believe. So should be a good time for those who are in North Carolina. Go back up here. 1 rifle and 1 pistol. That is not poor. That is a good place to start. So to quote John Simpson way back in episode 2 of the podcast, the man who trains with a stick will defeat the man who plays with a sword. So if you only have 1 rifle and 1 pistol, then make up the best rifle and pistol you can and practice the hell out of it. Pretty sure I got to equip a whole squad and then some. We should all be that way. You and me both. All right, Ilya, are you ready? Thumbs up. All right, we're going to bring Ilya on.
Howdy, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear
Excellent. You. For some reason, I can't get your Restream software to choose the nice camera. It insists on using the integrated webcam.
Oh, the best camera.
Yeah. So I look a little bit less handsome than usual, but you'll have to forgive me. I have a couple of minutes, but the prisms on carry handles is sort of an interesting thing. And I've spent a good amount of time messing with it and trying to figure out how it works with different mounts. And it basically becomes an interesting thing. If you want to, and you alluded to this, if you want to shoot well, standing, essentially very heads up, and you have neck issues, very high mount is a good thing for you. You can't really shoot with it prone. When any shooting position involves leaning forward, it will not work well. You just do not have the good means to index yourself behind the optic. In what seems to be driving the very tall optics mounts is that we're all getting older and our necks don't bend anymore. Arguably more importantly, a lot of people are wearing helmets when they shouldn't. And when you have a helmet and a chin strap and all this sort of jazz, now all of a sudden you just can't get that low. One of the most entertaining thing at the shooting range is watching a mole ninja try to shoot prone in a helmet. That's at 2 p.m. in California, on Saturday, that kind of stuff. But it does become an interesting thing because a lot of people prefer the heads-up shooting position. So how do you adjust the optic, right, so that it fits everything? What a lot of good shooters I know, not a lot, but a good number of them are essentially converging to is a piggyback red dot sight. That gives you that heads-up position with the red dot sight when you want to go fast. And if you have something more stable, the primary optic is below the red dot sight, and you use that. Is this making sense?
Yes, to me.
Shooting prone with an ACH and an ACOG is another level of annoyance, yes. Definitely is.
So I think this is something I wanted, because I wanted to try it out with like a really low, like maybe that Cyclops 1X from Primary Arms and see how that worked. But I think a 3X would be really interesting. But seeing that I don't actually have any rifles only with carry handles, I don't really.
Well, so I have one rifle with a carry handle that I built, and right now I am experimenting on it with the occluded eye gun sight that I just got from Armson. My next experiment is to pop Primary Arms Micro 3X on there and spend a little bit of time trying to figure out how well it would work. It's somewhat more forgiving of eye position than most compact ACOGs, definitely more forgiving than the 3 to 24. So it might work all right, but it's going to be an experiment.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you. That was
Absolutely
really good to know.
I am going to go eat dinner because I did not get this fat by skipping dinner. It's a pleasure to be visiting with you, and I hope this takes off.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll look forward to our talk next week.
Excellent.
All right, thanks.
Take care.
All right, so that's Ilya, the Dark Lord of Optics. Check out his channel as well. Ilya, if you don't mind, drop a link in the chat to your channel as well. All right, coming back up here. So would that psionics work as a passive night vision mounted in front of an optic? I have no idea. I mean, granted, it was JD who mentioned it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's meant for weapon mounting or not. I saw a question in there about best bang for your buck while training. While training during ammo shortage. I mean, there's a couple things here that I have learned throughout all of this. So number one, there is absolutely nothing at all wrong with dry fire. I think in general, everybody, and I'm guilty of this, but everybody should be dry firing 10 minutes a day or working on something 10 minutes a day, because you can build a lot of skill and a lot of practice that way with no other tools besides you and your weapon and whatever skill you're trying to work on. If you're trying to work on pistol marksmanship, then dry fire with a wall, against a wall. If you're trying to work on like reloads, you can do that. I would say you need a shot timer. You can use your phone and you can get a free app that'll let you do par times and just say, all right, I'm going to have 2 seconds par time for a draw and a first shot against something on the wall and run that 20 times. Just do it 10 minutes. And then, reset your timer every time. That's what you can do at a minimum. If you're talking about more precision rifle kinds of thing. So I did a PRS rimfire match 2 months ago. And again, I don't have a ton of spare ammo to practice for that, nor range time. I've got a toddler. So that's hard to come by. So the bulk of my time, this is the advice of one of my guests on the podcast when we talked about PRS training, was, of course, you can work on your trigger control and everything, but eventually you get to a point where that's good enough. But the bigger challenge is working on your position building. So, bring up a step ladder, set it up in your living room and practice, beat the timer. How quickly can you go through shooting off of each rung of a step ladder and go back up, while doing the whole, like, get your sight alignment stable, bang, great, go to the next rung of the step ladder, work on improvising all those little positions. That's the real challenge, is how quickly can you build a stable position? Leading from that, my other experience, both in training events and competition events, is that the more you practice the fundamentals, your basic kneeling, squatting, prone, sitting, all of that stuff, like that stuff doesn't really exist in the real world. They're not going to let you just do a perfect prone position, except for maybe one stage of a match. But the better you get at establishing your natural point of aim, how do you do improvised bone support? Then when you get into those other competition situations or tactical situations where there's less than perfect positioning, you do it good enough to make the hit. And that's the real challenge. And that required zero ammo to practice. So you can do all of that with no ammo and just in your house 10 minutes a day. Now, if you can go invest in tools, I see conversation here talking about the Blackbeard. So interesting enough, I do have a Blackbeard. It's currently in one of my rifles. I've got the battery pack right here, which, yes, it looks like a magazine. I like it a lot. It's sent to me by a magazine, so I'm not going to publish it on my website. But I like it a lot. I mean, it lets you, so the Blackbeard system does 2 things for an AR in particular. It's really interesting. The first one is that every time you pull the trigger, it resets the trigger. And it can do it 10 times a second. That's what they say. I pulled it pretty quick and it was resetting every time. So that's first thing. It resets the trigger for you pretty quick. So you can go up and do double taps and things. The second thing it does is it has a laser that goes down the bore. So you can, adjust it a bit. I've run into some height over bore issues, at closer range, but you can get feedback on where that dot hits. So you can go paste an IDPA or USPSA target up against the wall, and then practice ready ups with a timer. Again, how set your par timer on a phone, beep up 5 shots, and can you do that 5 shots in less than however many seconds? The next level from that one, I think, is also Mantis X, runs the Blackbeard, is the Laser Academy system. I've also been tinkering with that one, same magazine. But the benefit there now is that you can actually use real targets. Well, not real targets. There are replications of real targets. But then the phone looks at the target, and as a laser hits, it scores it for you. So it does par times, all kinds of interesting stuff. Not a cheap system. But certainly less expensive than blowing several hundred rounds of ammo at a range. Would be remiss if pistols if I didn't also talk about the Mantis X, this inertial unit. That I do own. It's currently mounted on a pistol, so I can't show it to you without getting in trouble with YouTube. But that's another really great system. But do I think those things are absolutely necessary? No. I think they're really nifty tools for getting in that practice, but I don't think they're strictly necessary to get there. They're just things that will supplement your program as far as dry fire goes. So, mentioning Blackbeard makes dry fire so much more enjoyable. I agree. I've enjoyed my time with it quite a bit. Hopefully I don't have to give it back, but I don't want to. Maybe I'll see if I can buy it off of them. Coming back up. Let's see. So talking about the FLIR, I think that's something that's really useful. There's a funny video going around about the power of thermal, and it's from an airsoft match where a guy stuck one of these on top of his bolt action airsoft rifle and just cleaned up the field because he could superpowers and see through the shrubs and where everybody was hiding. Companies selling an IR floodlight, flashlight, IR laser, all in one package. I mean, I know those exist. I would be wary of inexpensive ones. Let's see, dry fire. Yes. There we go. I think even at the range, mixing in dry fire with live fire helps the bang for the buck a lot. Yeah, so that's a great tool as well. So when I was pretty early on, and I don't have a great ammo budget now that everything costs so much. But back when I paid about $5 for a box of ammo, I would still make my range session stretch out by doing 5 dry fire shots for every live fire. So it took a while to get through one magazine, but that's what I would do. I would practice it 5 times, dry fire, and then I would fire the live shot. And that worked pretty well. Another thing you can do with it, just to throw in there, is if you get snap caps. So like this is a 9mm snap cap. Intersperse these in with your live ammo, and then you can practice some malfunctions along the way. Just kind of slow down your pace a little bit. Let's see. So my cadre told me that they have only used the prone position a handful of times on deployment and firefights in the sandboxes. Auto practice being more mobile and fit. So there's 2 things interesting here. Now I'm not gonna compare myself to your cadre's experience, in actual firefights. I don't have that background. But first off, the last 2 points, I absolutely agree there. It goes back to what I said earlier. Stronger people are harder to kill and more useful in general. And there's a lot of really good argument towards being more mobile and fit. And also more mobile includes being lighter, both light in your gear and light yourself. That's a big component of that. And there's a lot that goes a long way. Prone is interesting in that this is so, to me, again, non-combat veteran, but it is so circumstantial and depends a lot on where you are. Because as I have been told, depending if you're in a firefight in the woods or something, you will try and fit behind your helmet if you can, as soon as you have incoming rounds. And going prone sometimes is the best way to help get you low. And if your cover is a downed log or a curb, that's what you have available to you. So it could work out. Now, doing prone in terms of pure marksmanship prone, Probably not going to happen. You don't have time for that. But being good at getting that natural point of aim is really, really helpful. So there's arguments all the way around. I think this is very circumstantial, and honestly, it's beyond my skill level. It could be a good topic, or my background, be a good topic to bring in somebody who's been in those circumstances and what their opinion is. Also practice dry fire while being behind cover. Oh yeah, so this is yeah, absolutely. You can practice these drills like get behind a wall, do a reload, go back out, and again, I'll do this on a part-timer. There's no reason that wouldn't work out. JD says, yeah, catching recoil anticipation is another great reason to use snap caps. This is absolutely true. My wife is guilty of doing this to me in the past. When we go to the range, she would randomly insert snap caps into my magazine to see what I would do. And thankfully, the last time she did that, which has been several years ago, there was no difference. Hammer fell, and it was just immediate tap, rack, bang, and then off we went. Didn't even realize it was a snap cap, but it is a really good drill to do. With 1x prism, is a red dot falling out of favor? I don't think so. I had this discussion actually with Ilya, I think, on his stream one time, but the general trend for this one is it's not that they're falling out of favor. There's still things that a red dot sight can do better, and that mostly comes down to how parallax works, and things like eye relief and all that stuff that don't exist with a red dot sight, but a red dot sight is still better at doing red dot sight things. Like if you have to shoot really fast up close from awkward positions, it's just going to be better for that, hands down. A 1x prism has other benefits though, especially if you're like me and you have a bit of astigmatism. Now mine is not bad enough that I can't use a red dot. It works generally pretty well for me. But if you're at a point where your eyes have enough astigmatism that red dot is actually getting pretty imprecise and it's a cluster of things, the prisms can usually help with that because, not barring ACOGs and LCANs, they're adjustable. They have adjustable oculars, so you can make that reticle a lot sharper for yourself. That has a lot of benefits. Now, what you give up for doing that is the awkward position shooting, the speed up close, which is of dubious benefit depending on who you are and your circumstances, because that's, the hip sexy thing to do is I'm CQBing my way everywhere. So of course I've got the high speed red dot, but the way most of us actually use our rifles, most of the time that 1x prism is going to do just fine in lots and lots of situations. Good question though. Good topic. All right. Any others? We're coming up on about 54 minutes. So coming up on the hour. That went a lot faster than I thought it was going to be for our first stream. Wow. All right. Well, with that, I want to say thank you for coming to hang out with me today. This is my first stream ever, so I'm sure I will learn new tips and tricks of the trade as we go. But it's been a pleasure. Come check out the website, everydaymarksman.co, and there you're going to find all the articles, social media links, our podcast episodes, and of course, jump on the email list. I do send out typically a weekly email just with here's what's going on at the site. Sometimes I send out, impromptu things where it's going to include like a mini review of something that I'm not posting to the website, or just, thoughts on what's going on in the world. So with that, thanks for coming to hang out with me today. And I hope to see you guys next week when I talk to Ilya and Jeff about BDC and precision reticles. With that, wait, one more. All right, before I sign off, thanks. One last comment in there from JD. I got to take this plug. Thank you, JD. I appreciate that. So, all right. And on that note, I appreciate you all coming to hang out with me today. I'm glad it was a good turnout for very first stream, and I will see you next